Hey everybody, it's Cooper Guyon, host of the Guyon Show. I'm here with State Senator Jason Anavitarte. Jason, thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
So I'm going to list you 5 names and terms, and you tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Stacey Abrams.
Very bad for Georgia.
Constitutional carry.
Got to get it done.
The establishment.
Tired of career politicians.
The 2020 election.
We've got Senate Bill 202 passed, and we need to make sure that it gets implemented the way the citizens want it implemented.
Critical race theory.
Keep it out of our schools.
All right. So speaking of constitutional carry, I wanted to talk about, you've got a constitutional carry bill that you've dropped in the state Senate. How can not only citizens get involved in this, but how can we make our lawmakers get this passed? Because it's an important issue.
So I think to get the bill passed, I think first it's the very, very basic kind of civic engagement is the citizens need to reach out to their elected officials.
Right.
House members, Senate members, statewide officers, and just talk about the importance of why we believe constitutional carry should be passed and protecting our Constitution, our Second Amendment rights. But I think, maybe there's some legislators that need some education on the issue. I think believe it or not, there probably are legislators where it exists that maybe they're not too familiar with this Second Amendment issue. I know it's been around for a long time. But we need to make sure the citizens have vehicles in the sense of, places they can speak up, and even if it means like when we're working on the bill during the legislative session, visiting the Capitol, making calls, sending the emails, those kind of things, showing up to a Republican Party meeting, talking about it. But I really believe this is an important issue that a lot of citizens I know in Senate District 31 want passed. When I was campaigning, it was probably the top 2 issue, and my job is to do what the citizens want us to do.
Right. It definitely is really important, and it's a pressing issue, and I think we can get it passed. You've got 3 daughters, and
Yep.
I'm a high school student. Education is a really important thing. How can we better our education system in Georgia?
So that's a great question. So I've always believed, before I was a school board member, and now senator, dad of 3 daughters. My wife was a PTA president, so we've been highly involved in our kids' schools since they've been in school and before. I think, for me, the philosophy that everything revolves around our schools, our economic prowess, in West Georgia, the social aspect of families getting together, everything we do kind of in a day-to-day world revolves around, what are our kids doing in school. And so I think if you take that to a much bigger level, looking at the state and the nation, I think, one of the biggest things that I constantly still hear from teachers when I was on the school board and today is, what are we doing to make their lives a little bit easier? They have one of the most stressful jobs.
Yeah.
So many of them are heroes to so many of our kids. And so we need to empower them, equip them to kind of make decisions in their classrooms and give them the tools and resources. I think, over the years, we've given teacher pay raises, and we've almost fully funded QBE this last session. But I think we've got to go further and outside the box of what are we doing from a tangible perspective, and listening to our teachers about what are the things that they need. I think the other thing too is making sure our schools are equipped, for the 21st century in the sense of, the global workforce, preparing our students to whether they want to get their hands dirty like my dad did working in the trucking industry, to be a mechanic, to be a truck driver, to be a welder, but then also create pathways to where students, maybe if they do want to go off to college or university and be a scientist or a doctor or whatever, they have those pathways. But I think we got to make the investments around science and technology and math, STEM programs in our community. We need more greater cyber workforce because of the times we're in. But we can't forget, how do we enhance and create a bigger workforce in terms of blue collar jobs in our community, because that's the foundation of basically our economy and everything that our community in West Georgia resides on. So if we're going to bring those jobs, then what are we doing to make sure that happens?
So you mentioned blue collar jobs. What does it mean to you and in general to be a blue collar worker in Georgia?
So how I was raised, my dad learned to become a mechanic when he was in the U.S. Army. And that was kind of his main mission when he served in Vietnam. He was a Purple Heart recipient. And when he came back, his first job, coming back from being in active duty, was to find a job working as a mechanic in the trucking industry. And for him and for us, it wasn't a whole lot of pay. We were lower middle class, family in terms of income and wages. And so every dollar that he made, my mom stayed home, took care of me and my brother. So every dollar he made, we basically had to save. And during those times, and just like these times, I think that it's the hard work and persistence that if we're not working almost every hour of the day, and sometimes even to the night, and I know he had employees that were working overnight sometimes to make sure trucks were on the road and shipments were being moved forward. From a logistics perspective, making sure that the family's taken care of, having to get up early every morning and understand what is the meaning of hard work, and that those values that are driven into kind of your family lifestyle, making sure that you're going to school, you're showing up. My dad used to say, always kind of joke, stay out of trouble. Like, he always was in trouble. But I think it's working hard to kind of build and provide for the family and the family unit, and all of us kind of stick together, just to ensure that, the community around us, we all kind of stick together. And so from a blue collar perspective, it's kind of the day in and the day out where, we don't sit back and just let, the powers that be, kind of tell us what to do. My dad would always joke that, he would have a lot of white collar folks at work that, would maybe, they would have a different perspective because they were up here and the rest of us were down here. And, I think that, some of those sentiments we're seeing in society today, where a lot of people, whether they don't trust the government, they don't trust their leaders, is because the citizens, or kind of the folks closest to the folks who are in the community, maybe sometimes are forgotten. And I think those are the things that, being raised in my family, I think my dad experienced, just from being in a blue collar workforce, that everyone was important, everyone's mattered, everybody's hard work, was important. Their voice and their opinion also mattered too. And I think we always got to remind that in everything we do every day, that we need to listen to the people. We need to listen to the people who are working hard and providing, to put food on the table and are barely getting by right now. And I think it's a very real thing in West Georgia. My job is to fight for resources, as appropriate. My job is to make sure that that lifestyle within our population is not just protected, but we're advocating for those families to be able to live the values that they want. So
right. I'm the son of an immigrant like you are. My dad's from France and yours is from Puerto Rico. So as a Latino American, what is your take on what's going on in Cuba right now?
So, my take at the end of the day, I've had this conversation with Senator Rubio, and he's been on the forefront working with Governor DeSantis and Senator Scott in Florida, with a lot of the Cuban Americans that are in Miami and throughout Florida and across the country. And we have a large Cuban American community here in Atlanta. At the end of the day, it's about freedom, it's about independence. So many of my friends, one of my friends in particular I went to college with, his dad floated on a raft from Cuba to South Florida to escape Castro. And at the end of the day, what's going on right now in terms of the lack of, vaccines and medicine and healthcare and just kind of the basic things that maybe you and I take for granted every single day. It's at a point where I think the people of Cuba are sick and tired of it. They're tired of having an oppressive regime shoving policies and just the lack of a real way of life on the island down their throats. And I think, most Cubans want what we have as Americans. And I think we're going to see, hopefully, that, the United States is going to support the Cuban people, let them be free, let them be independent, and that, we address and deal with, and not kind of lay down to, dictators and socialists and Marxism folks that, don't really care about, our future. And I think that impacts U.S. interests across the world. I think we have to have a strong foreign policy. And so, folks like Governor DeSantis, who's at a state level, is kind of addressing this issue. And I know Senator Rubio and Senator Scott are working on it at a federal level. I think there's a place not just for the Floridians, but I think there's a place for all Americans and even us leaders here in Georgia that we need to step up and just stand with the Cuban people and make sure our voices are being heard.
So, not everybody knows this, but you're the first Republican Latino American in the Georgia General Assembly. So what does that mean to be the first in that role?
So I'm the first Republican Latino senator.
Okay.
David Casas was a House member from Gwinnett County, and he's doing pretty well himself. He's a former school teacher. But for me, I feel like all of us in the Senate, there's 56 of us, there's 34 Republicans. We all have our unique view on, how we see the world today and how we see life. I come from a generation of, being born when Ronald Reagan was president. Space shuttles were just starting to fly in this, to outer space. And so, the world from the late 70s to today has dramatically changed. I think, having a dad who was born in Ponce, Puerto Rico, who lived through towards the end of the Depression of where the world was today, and basically, living in a house with a dirt floor, and basically having nothing to, finding his way to the U.S. Army to make something of himself, to gather the skills to one day have a job. All of that is something that, I know my family, and I have family that's still in Puerto Rico, that, family is first. Across the board, whether it's, taking care of each other, making sure we're all okay, making sure that, we're all making sure our kids and grandkids and nephews and nieces are getting the education they need, but, we all rally around each other when times are tough and even when times are good, take care of each other. But I think those values, in terms of, a lot of us in the Latino community, are very similar, if not the same, as all the values I think you and I prescribe to. I know a lot of the citizens in West Georgia prescribe to, in terms of what are we doing for our families, number one, what are we doing for our education system, what are we doing to protect, our right to practice our faith. All of those things are important to, I think, Latinos, and I think one of the things we saw, even in the 2020 election, and even back when President Trump was elected, was this, movement of Latino voters, I think, to the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. They're moving to the Republican Party because of our values, because of we don't believe, again, like you were talking about with Cuba, we don't believe in the socialist oppressive regimes that want to take over the world, and that government knows best and government knows how to do everything. Well, I think in our community we know that more government is not good. And I think you've seen Republican mayors, elected to office on the U.S.-Mexican border in South Texas.
Yeah.
Many people may not know that many family members of those Latino leaders or Latinos, in that part of the country, are married to these border patrol officers who are family members. Mm-hmm. And so they're seeing what's going on with Mexico and Cuba and all these other foreign relations issues. But at the same time, they understand that, put the national security piece aside, put the immigration piece aside, they understand the inherent values of what it means to not only do their job, but the risks and threats that may exist to local towns like in South Texas, as Latinos. So it's, I always tell my friends that, immigration, people want to talk about it, but, there are Latinos like myself who believe in strong borders, strong national security, all of those things. And it's not what the left always wants to do or the liberal agenda. So I feel like, there are some inherent values that I think resonate, all over our state, all over our country. And I think the more we embrace, I think the aspects of, personal independence, personal decision-making, less government, practicing our faith, and growing an economy, for all of us to succeed. Those are some of the basic tenets, I think, of what many Latinos believe in Georgia and beyond.
So the Republican Party's growing a lot, and it's growing past our base of this everyday conservatives that the Bush Republicans and all that. It's growing further than that. And when you see Miami-Dade County is very close to flipping Republican. We've got congressmen from there. The mayor down there is a Republican. So do you talk to me a little bit? I know you elaborated on it, but just a little bit more about this shift of Latinos coming into our party and how our ideology is welcoming.
So for me, it all boils down to, and you mentioned it before, Cooper. I think is really what is blue collar values. A lot of the Latinos in South Florida, Orlando, we have a large Puerto Rican community. Many even Mexican Americans throughout Florida, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina. A lot of them are cab drivers. A lot of them work in restaurants. A lot of them work in the trucking industry. A lot of them are working to move product. These are all hardworking people, folks who like to get their hands dirty. And I think from a values perspective is that when they go home and they finish that job that day, all they want to do is go home and be with their family and take care of their family. I think that is what the movement is, and I think that you start intruding on what's going on in my school. You start pushing things on me and my family in terms of a pro-choice agenda. Those things that kind of violate almost like my family or my personal space. I think a lot of Latinos, why they're embracing the American First or Republican agenda, is because of that. I think it's because they want to be left alone, but they also too, because of where so many families have come from in terms of whether they're escaping Venezuela or Cuba or wherever, the reason they're coming here is because they can live out that independence and freedom that they will never get there. So why would I ever want to move from one oppressive regime, and hopefully we don't have an oppressive regime in America today, and that's where we have to fight for the fabric of our country to make sure that never happens. That's what makes America great. And I think those are the things that from some of the policies during the Trump presidency, why folks felt like they were left behind or not being heard. I think it's because of those things, and we always got to keep that in the forefront of our mind every time we take a vote or make a decision. Is what's in the best interest of my next door neighbor, not what's in the best interest of the politicians.
So I have to ask, I don't think I'll get an answer. So after your time is up in the state Senate, what's next for you?
I don't know. I take everything one day at a time. I don't know what the future holds. I follow whatever God tells me what I need to be doing. Make sure I'm listening. Make sure I'm being obedient. I think at the end of the day, for me, it's focusing on what's best for my wife, 3 kids, my family, and kind of figure out where are we going from there, day in and day out. So my priorities right now is school starts in almost a week. So and I know I'm sure you're looking forward to it, but you're almost at the end of the road.
Yeah.
Mine are several years to go. And so looking forward to school starting back up, and hopefully I know in Paulding County and Polk and Bremen and Harrelson it'll be hopefully a successful school year just like it was before. We got a lot of good leaders, but just being there to support our families and kind of as they go through all of that. So
right. So election integrity and election reform were a big push of yours, probably the biggest this past session. So tell me a little bit about the bills that you've introduced and that you've signed on to and what you've accomplished.
So I was fortunate enough in the Georgia Senate. I served on the Ethics Committee, which was kind of the originator, and then was able to do the final vote for Senate Bill 202. Which basically reformed the entire election system, bringing greater transparency, making it easier to vote, harder to steal, harder to cheat.
Right.
And so taking a lot of feedback from a lot of folks, good and bad, in terms of how our election process should be. I think at the end of the day for us, in the Georgia Senate, it's all about transparency. It's all making sure that everybody knows what's going on, everybody knows the rules to the game, and that, nothing in government is perfect. but I think taking the lessons learned of what we hear from the citizens, and there's a lot of debate that goes on over what happened, but for me as a leader, is, if my community feels like they have a trust issue, then we should run into the fire and see and address what is the trust issue that they have. It's not my job to sit here and judge your views or the citizens' views about what's right or wrong. I don't think as we're being, where you're at in your life and me growing up, those weren't the values that I was taught. I think if there's a genuine issue there, we need to listen to it, we need to address it, and figure out, how do we move forward. And I think we did that with Senate Bill 202. I was involved in a lot of this process back after the November election, before I was even sworn in, asking for, even just a sample audit of, what was going on in various different parts of the state. So I think where a lot of the conversation is today, I think we need to listen to the citizens and do what they ask and keep moving forward.
So not everybody knows this, and only thing I don't like about you, Jason, you're a Patriots fan.
Oh, it's okay.
So next season, you guys just drafted a first-round quarterback. Just wanted to ask a fun question here. What do you think about Mac Jones? Is he going to be the next Tom Brady or a flop?
So we'll see. I mean, I know all the Alabama fans who are probably watching this are probably cheering Mac on, and I actually hope that he becomes a starting quarterback on day one. It's kind of hard to follow in the shoes of Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback, the greatest probably NFL player ever, and I'm sure some folks will have that debate. But I think we'll do fairly well, but it's, the divisions are getting much harder. For all the Falcons fans out there, I hope the year gets a little better.
I hope so too.
Right now it's pretty hard in Atlanta sports with some of the devastating injuries we've seen to the Atlanta Braves and the Hawks almost making it to the end. But I'm a big sports fan. I've coached basketball. I've coached my daughter's basketball team at North Paulding High School over the years, and so we're a big basketball lacrosse family, and so just getting outdoors and participating and moving around, just getting exercise, is important to us. But I think hopefully the Patriots will be back this year.
I hope not. I'm a Falcons fan.
I think they may play each other this year.
Yeah, I think we do. That's gonna be a good one. We won't talk that week.
That's right.
So one last question. At the end of your time in the state Senate, what's the one thing that you will have wanted to accomplish?
I think at the end of the day, for me, it's not about accolades. It's not about what is kind of the one bill that hey, like you point to and say, hey, you got done. For me, it's that I hope I one day walk away from the Senate and basically am able to say, hey, I did everything I was supposed to do. Working hard and doing what the citizens expect of me, and making sure that our values are protected, and looking at it from a very basic, fundamental perspective. And I think if it's as long as I'm defending America and I'm defending Georgia and I'm defending West Georgia, but also advocating and bringing West Georgia to the table of the decision-making table, where for so long in many parts of our district, we've not been relevant. And one of the things I told the citizens when I ran is, I want West Georgia to be relevant again. I want people in Georgia to know where Cedartown is. I want people to know where Dallas is. I want them to know where Tallapoosa and Bremen and Waco and Buchanan and Rockmart and all of our cities and Hiram, we're not just where they're at, but what do they stand for? What are their values? Who are the people who live there every day, trying to make ends meet, go to work, get their kids educated, and at the end of the day, have the greatest community in the state? And I believe we live in the greatest community in the state. I know other senators can say they live in the coast or they live in the mountains or whatever, but I think where we live, it's pretty awesome. I don't take it for granted. And I think every day that, I wake up, it's just, I'm out there doing what God tells me to do. And I think as long as we kind of, go down that pathway and we show up for the fight every day and go into the battle, go into the fire, I think that's what the citizens expect us to do. I think those that don't, it may be time for them to go find something else to do. I mean, like you asked me at the beginning, what do I think of the establishment of career politicians? I think it's a new day in Georgia, and I think leaders, the citizens expect our leaders to do more.
Right.
I think a lot of citizens are kind of like, what have you done for me lately? Which I think is honestly a fair mindset. But I think if we're not doing what they want us to do, I mean, I have to ask the question of those leaders, why are you here? And I'm going to support those who want to be leaders and move the needle in Georgia, and those who are going to be fighting for the citizens. And you know, and I think most people know I'm not shy about, you know, speaking my mind, being very black and white, and telling the citizens that.
Well, I really appreciate you and all that you're doing. You're doing a great job, and I'm proud to be your student advisor. Thank you so much.
Proud to have you working with us, and do you want to real quick?
Oh yeah, we can talk.
I'm going to ask you now a question.
Oh,
you want to talk about your side?
Yeah. So Senate Bill 316, you dropped it. It's in the Senate, and basically what it would do is
you wrote it.
Yeah, I came up with it. Is make cyberbullying an aggravated misdemeanor from an adult to a minor, so that if an adult is harassing a minor online, it's up to a year in jail or a $1,000 fine. It closes this legal loophole and helps zone in on cyberbullying, which is a horrible thing. But no, we just want to advocate positive change, good change, and that's the number one thing that this bill's focused on.
And so for the folks watching, like, so when Cooper's bill comes up, call our House delegation, call our House members. We'll have senators you can call, but let's get this bill done. You know, I don't know. I mean, we talked about the bill numbers kind of.
Yeah, so 316.
So amazing.
It was the week of Easter, and I think the verse is it was a biblical one. It was a verse that had to do with Jesus coming again, Jesus rising from the dead. And it was that week before Easter that we dropped that bill, and it just happened to be a verse that had to do with Jesus rising from the dead, and it was really a special thing, and I'm excited to get the bill passed.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun bill, and I think anything we do to protect students and families, I mean, those are the bills we should be passing. Maybe fewer of the other bills that want to increase the size of government and those things.
Right.
But I think it's a positive bill, and I look forward to working with you on it and getting it done. So.
Well, thank you so much, Jason.
No, thanks for having me, and again, thanks for the citizens for allowing me to serve in the Senate and fight for everyone. And you know, we got a long road ahead. I mean, there's so much to do, and I think we've, you know, as you've talked about, I know our Republican Party chairman Jim Tully in Paulding County keeps talking about is, if you want things changed, if you want to move the needle, show up for the fight.
Right.
If you don't show up for the fight, can't complain.
Right.
So just want to say thank you and God bless.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you guys for tuning in. It was a great episode. You can follow me on Instagram at The Guyon Show, or on Facebook, Cooper Guyon de Chimley. Thank you guys so much. God bless you. Have a great week.